So I'm Billy with Evil Motorsports, and today we're going to show you how we do a quick oil change on our Subaru STI track car. Everybody's a little bit different. I use the Fumoto quick drain valve. A lot of people do like to use these on their Subarus, but definitely there's mixed opinions if you go on to the internet or you talk to some friends. Some people hate it. I love the device. It allows me to do a quick oil change, and it allows me to do it anywhere, even if I'm in the parking lot at a hotel or if I'm at a late night at the racetrack and I want to change it before the next day. This allows me to do that pretty quickly without having to worry about not having the standard conveniences of being in your home garage. So we're going to show you how this works, and definitely some of these things do apply to your standard oil change on your regular car. So here's the engine bay of the Subaru STI, our time attack car here. So the two things I'm going to do before we swap out our oil, I'm going to open our dipstick a little bit. That's just going to allow air to vent through the tube. The other thing is I'm going to take off our oil cap. For me, that means I do have to disconnect a sensor line. Just go ahead and remove the cap. That's just going to allow everything to drain out faster. So as I mentioned earlier, we have our Subaru set up for a quick drain with this Fumoto valve here. The nice thing about this is it just allows a quick oil change. It usually only takes us about 5 minutes to drop the oil in the car. We're not going to change the filter today because we change the oil about every 1,000 miles, so there's really no need right now. So we're just going to flip this valve right quick. Sometimes definitely get a little messy, but now we'll just let this drain out, and once it's done, then we'll get the new oil in. So now we are at basically the end of the oil draining here. It's just kind of dripping out. There's still a little bit of oil left in the sump. That's the downside with the Fumoto valve. It's what people will talk about on the internet. Basically, the sump still has some oil in there, so it'll continue to drip like this. The Fumoto valve's about an inch into the pan, so it can never fully drain while the pan's attached to the car. With the Subaru, though, I tend to pull the pan about every 1 to 2 years, so I can get that oil eventually. We'll just close the valve and then clean this area up. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put our new oil in. Go ahead and throw our funnel in, and as far as what type of oil to run, I'm not going to get involved in this argument. Definitely with the Subarus, there is a ton of back and forth about what's best. But definitely with my vehicle, again, we're changing the oil usually every 1,000 miles or so. So I try to run something that is going to be cost effective. All right, so that's our first bottle in. So now we can go ahead and get a initial reading after the first bottle's in, just kind of see where we're at. I always do 2 readings because you want to make sure that one of them's not just completely wrong. So it looks like we're still about a half a quart shy, which is definitely about what I expected, because it's 1 bottle and a little bit more usually to get us where we need to be. How high up on the dipstick does the oil need to be? Very good question. So the reality is, on our Subaru situation, we have actually 2 holes on the dipstick. Between these 2 holes is 1 quart of oil. So you definitely want to have the bottom hole showing oil, and you need to get it to where the top hole shows also. You'll also notice that there is a little notch here. That's a warm oil. So as the oil gets warm, it can take up a little more volume in here, and that top notch is max level. So it looks like we're at a good spot. So we'll go ahead and cap everything off. It's good practice to recheck this after you've fired the car up, and let it get up to operating temperature. Let the car cool back down overnight is our usual practice. Check it in the morning, top off if necessary. So we're going to put our cap back on, and as I said at the beginning, we got to reattach our little sensor. This is something that Flatiron's Tuning did a lot of work on, and basically this allows us to kind of make sure that we don't have any positive pressure in our crankcase while we're on track. If you have positive pressure inside the crankcase, that could be a sign that you have a broken ringland. And I have a tendency of collecting those. I've busted ringlands off 4 pistons within this car prior to the current engine that we're on. So definitely ringlands is a subject on these vehicles. So this is something that can give you a little bit of insight to how healthy that engine is. And at this point, we are done with our oil change. We're going to document it in our log so that we know exactly when and how and what we did here. So if we ever have to look back, we know. So final step, we're going to go ahead and recycle our old oil. Basically, you want to have some kind of a reusable container. If you run out, you can always use the container that your oil came in. But definitely they make containers for this. So we're going to just carefully make sure that we get all of our oil dumped in here, and then we'll be able to take it to our local auto shop, and they usually have big canisters in the back that you just kind of dump into. But definitely sometimes you do have to call around to find where you can dispose of whichever auto chemical you got in your hands. It's always good to also just kind of make sure that you're not seeing any kind of metal fragments or any water sitting on top of the oil. Any signs of, that you might have something going on that you might need to investigate further. If you are really concerned, one of the nice things of having that valve is I can take off a small sample of the oil. There are companies that you can mail your oil sample out to, and they will run a full analysis to see how much lead, different metal types are in there, so you know if you're shedding bearing material or if you're having a lot of fuel get stuck in your oil. So there's definitely some options if you are worried about what's going on with your oil. And now we're ready to recycle it, and that is how we take care of our oil on our track car.